Thanks for pressing play on another edition of Another Dolphins Podcast. Brian, Cat, Joshua Houtz are both joining me, which means it's time for our mock draft 2.0. I have listed it in the description of this podcast. If you'd like to see how we would rebuild the Miami Dolphins, go check out our 1.0 edition of our mock drafts. But today, mock draft 2.0, we are going to dive into how we believe the Miami Dolphins are going to fix this very, very weird-looking roster 2 weeks before the NFL draft. Before we get into that, Kat, I was talking to you before the show started here, and not does this happen often, but the Dolphins had two major dominoes fall in recent weeks, and I'd love to get your thoughts on how they impact the draft. Calais Campbell, he has decided that he is going to sign with the Arizona Cardinals on a one-year deal, where he started his career. On top of that, Teron Armstead announced Saturday night that he will be retiring. Two guys that were pillars for the Miami Dolphins in years past, two guys we would have loved to have in the locker room for a must-win 2025 season. Kat, does either of these moves, neither were guaranteed to be returning to Miami, how do they impact the 2025 NFL draft, specifically the first round?
Defensive line with Calais Campbell gone, even though he's 38, I think it impacts it greatly because you have a giant hole there. You have a giant nothing there right now. At left tackle, I don't think it may impact it a little bit in the first round because you have all these guys who, like a Kelvin Banks, like a Will Campbell, who can play left tackle but can also kick inside the left guard. If you want to keep Patrick Paul there at left tackle, which is what we all assume. So, yeah, it's rough. The Armstead one wasn't a surprise. I guess Campbell wasn't as much either, but if Calais Campbell had gone to the Ravens or to the Eagles or to a team that, hey, I'm going to get 500 snaps here, I would have understood. But for him to go back to the 8 and 9 Cardinals at this point when he's trying to win a championship, pretty damning indictment.
Yeah, and I wonder if that's just like a testament to, the Dolphins and what they maybe offered him, or, maybe he just wants to do the whole full circle thing, right? I mean, he was a Cardinal at one point, but it was a little baffling to see him sign for, 1 year, $5.5 million. For me, I don't know that either of these were too much of a surprise. Like Kat said, my biggest surprise is it being the Cardinals and not a contender. And as for Teron Armstead, I mean, for as much as we love him, let's be honest, he was, in and out of the lineup. He's told us time and time again, I should have season-ending injury, right? Wasn't there like a week 2 injury to his knee where he said he could have missed the entire season, played through that? I think there was an injury now coming out from 2024. So I think I'm not really too surprised with Armstead hanging things up, but it definitely concerns me with what the Dolphins are going to do moving forward, right? They still have that hole at guard. All right. And now, potentially you have Patrick Paul, who is uncertainty. They have to have confidence in him. You're pretty much sink or swim at this point with him. And then defensive side of the football, I mean, we've all kind of seen that huge hole there at defensive tackle. So I think the biggest thing is why is Chris Grier, building this lineup, right? We looked back how many years ago at how young this unit was, all these up-and-comers. They signed these veterans, these guys who were key cogs who come in and, kind of fill a spot or a weakness, for a year or two. And this is kind of the situation you're in. So let's see Chris Grier get himself out of this one, right?
Beautifully said, Josh. I'm 100% with you here, where the plan to absorb the blow of losing Teron Armstead started last year with the addition of Patrick Paul. I think it was forward-looking, but I think a lot of people are also looking at this Miami Dolphins roster, the depth chart specifically. There's not a lot of push there on the offensive line. You got Patrick Paul. Liam Eichenberg is actually currently penciled in as a starter. I think the Miami Dolphins, we'll get to this shortly, will draft a guard, a tackle, something like that in the first round. But Kat, did you happen to notice that on social media, that a lot of people after Armstead's leaving, it's like, man, after Paul and Jackson, there's not a lot of answers here. And I thought that could have been one of the unique scenarios about bringing someone like Armstead back. He has always preached how important his preparation is and how important it is for him to fight on the field. So maybe it wasn't unrealistic, but I thought the Dolphins, as of right now, could have desperately used a veteran who could maybe play 4 or 5 games, otherwise sit in the locker room and be a glue guy. I thought Armstead would have been awesome for that.
Oh, yeah, I think anytime Armstead's on your team, it's a good thing. The most confusing thing to me was, there was rumors about him possibly needing a knee replacement.
Yeah.
And I start to ask myself, how did it take you 3 months to decide you wanted to retire if you may have needed a knee replacement? So I don't know. But yeah, and you look at that, and you also look at Kendall Lamb was supposed to retire. He said, no, I'm going to go to the Eagles. I don't know if that was more on him or the Dolphins, probably on him. But yeah, it really leaves the Dolphins with very little depth here with Keon Smith and Larry Bourne backing up both tackle spots.
Josh, what are your thoughts on the Kendall Lamb thing? Did you kind of feel that like smite to the Dolphins? Is that someone you'd want on the roster?
Yeah, I mean, especially now, right? In hindsight, we'd love to have a Kendall Lamb around because, like you said, Jake, for me, I mean, we lost two starters. Calais Campbell was very good. He was, that kind of guy that could just step in. But these are guys that were locker room leaders, right? And that's something that you just can't replace. So that's my biggest thing. I mean, how is this offense going to do with Teron Armstead out, and now it's Patrick Paul? I mean, thankfully, it's not Tua Tagovailoa's blindside, right? Do you guys think that's some little bit of it can ease our pain a little bit knowing that that's not his blind side. Maybe the Dolphins feel that way, but I would love to have a veteran in this lineup that you could kind of rely on in those pinch situations. Because, I mean, we talk about time and time again, 13 different variations a few years ago. I mean, this offensive line injuries, they're inevitable. And to look at this roster, this depth chart, and to think who might step up and Patrick Paul isn't the guy, I mean, that's terrifying.
The Dolphins haven't had a 5-player lineup on the offensive line play at least 10 games together since 2022. That to me is the biggest reason. Kendall Lamb, if you want to flirt with retirement and then go chase a ring, I'm 100% for that. I don't think the Dolphins, it's kind of the same boat as Armstead. You just need the stability there, and I don't want to discredit Armstead because when he's on the field, top 3 left tackle in the league any given week. One interesting thought I heard, Kat, I want to ask you, the Dolphins are in kind of it looks like a roller coaster on the offensive line. Patrick Paul entering year 2. One of the guard spots is left to be determined. Aaron Brewer, he's been in the league for a little bit. And then obviously Austin Jackson on the other side. When you kind of think about how the Dolphins are going to be working, where you have a second-year left tackle, where you kind of project a guard to be a rookie guard, to step in and be a starter. Does that impact how you line up someone like James Daniels? Would you put James Daniels at left guard so he's next to someone younger like Patrick Paul? And then on the other side where you have someone a little older like Austin Jackson, you can put a rookie in there and let him kind of grow between two vets like Brewer and Jackson. Is that something you think the Dolphins are considering?
It may be, but I would say that you're going to line up James Daniels in the position you think he's best at playing regardless. And I think that will be left guard when it's all said and done. Could be right guard, but we'll see. And I think that might depend on who's available here in the draft.
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's a really good question, Jake. I think we even touched on it a little bit. I think I blurted out that he was a left guard, James Daniels, in one of our previous pods. You confirmed, he has played mostly right guard. But for me, I think it would be, valuable to have him next to a Patrick Paul who's younger. But I think James Daniels came right out and said, he was asked that same question. He's like, it's no difference to me. I can play on either side. And it's really no difference for Patrick Paul. But, that's James Daniels saying that. I feel like James Daniels next to a young, inexperienced Patrick Paul, that would be better in my opinion. But again, I'm just a guy, wearing this rainbow hat talking Dolphins.
We are just a bunch of guys wearing hats talking 2.0 mock drafts. We had some flustered comments on our 1.0 draft. I think a lot of people, probably my fault for poorly explaining that's how we would fix the Dolphins. We have no job security. We are locked in here. You're stuck listening to us. 2.0 is where we're really going to change the focus. We're going to look at how we think the Miami Dolphins are going to approach the draft. This isn't how we are going to do it. This is how we're stepping inside of Chris Greer's brain, Mike McDaniel's brain, navigating all the word salad and figuring out how the Dolphins are going to draft. So, Kat, I want to start with you here. Who'd you go with your first pick?
Yeah, so I've got to look at who I wanted to fall down to that spot. I really want Will Johnson, the cornerback from Michigan, and Armand Membo, the tackle from Mizzou. But I look at the teams drafting 6 through 12, and so many of them have big needs at those two spots. So, unfortunately, I don't think either one are going to get to that spot. I've seen Will Johnson projected to go there and fall to 13 a lot more than Membo, but I say that neither one are there. So I have to look what the Dolphins have done from the beginning and just ignored the defensive line. I mean, not just Calais Campbell, but even these guys who you could sign for a couple of $1 million a year, they've ignored too. And I have to believe they decided early on, like they did in 2019, that they were going to draft a defensive lineman. And that guy is Kenneth Grant from Michigan. Now, again, I think they've backed themselves into a corner here. And I know that the this mock draft simulator sometimes has Grant falling to round 2. And I'll say right now, it's cheating if you take him in round 2, but you guys do what you want with that. But, somebody who's 6'4", 331 pounds and has physically, you're talking about Chris Jones-like ability. I mean, somebody who and he's not what you would think as a defensive tackle. You think he's a plug-and-play type of nose tackle, but he's not. He obviously can defend the run well, but he tries to get in the backfield a lot, actually a little more than I'd like. So, but I think that part of it, the part that can't be coached is his size, and the part that can be coached is his need to be a little bit of a better anchor.
Who do you got, Josh?
Well, okay, so I was sitting there, obviously pick 13 overall. Malachi Starks, he was a guy who, I considered, but like Cat, I saw that defensive line as a unit that they're going to go after. And, there's guys like Walter Nolan there, Derek Harmon. There are some options there, but I'm going to be honest, I went with exactly who Cat went with. So I'm just going to show you my little notes. That didn't work at all, but I went with Kenneth Grant. So Cat, both of us went with Kenneth Grant. I was, kind of torn on, I think it was like a 33rd ranked guy on Pro Football Network. You see him mocked higher in some, some experts, things like that. But for me, I watched him play. I think it was a few weeks ago. We talked about it. I went back, watched 4 games this past Thursday and Friday. And, I was watching Will Johnson, but Kenneth Grant continued to stand out, whether it was just him using his quickness to beat guards and get in the backfield for tackles for loss, being that big body that can take on 2 guys and be that anchor. I just pictured him next to Zach Sealer, and it got me giddy. And, he was that guy, you watch these prospects. And again, Walter Nolan, some might say he's higher rated. Derek Harmon as well. I mean, who am I to argue that they're wrong? But for me, there's just those guys you kind of get like a little bit of a draft crush on, and it was Kenneth Grant. So the fact he plays at Michigan, I mean, if this is ever a year for Stephen Ross, say, I want one of these Michigan guys, Will Johnson, Kenneth Grant, in a pipe dream world, maybe Mason Graham. I would like to see him land one. So I went with Kenneth Grant. I think defensive line with Calais Campbell, moving on to greener pastures. I don't know if that's the case, but with him moving on to Arizona, I went with Kenneth Grant as well. So damn, that sucks that we both picked him. But Jake, I'm hoping, we're praying that you have a different player than Kenneth Grant, because if it's Kenneth Grant, then the Dolphins are definitely not going to draft him if we all 3 pick him.
I thought what I got into was a disaster scenario for the Dolphins. Will Campbell went 2, Abdul Carter 4, Mason Graham 5th, Will Johnson 6th, Membu 8th, Kelvin Banks 10. After the Armstead retirement announcement, Kelvin Banks was kind of like this is going to be easy. This is going to be a layup. And even though you guys both took Kenneth Grant, I was going to come in here and say, would this be a disaster scenario where all 3 offensive linemen are gone, where Will Johnson's gone? And apparently it isn't for you guys. I ended up going Shamar Stewart, and I'm not happy about it. I think I would have preferred to trade back down, but I wanted to get your guys' thought on what the makeup of the defensive line would look like if you're starting with Sealer and Stewart up front, because I did it and I was feeling okay, but then there was some 3rd round guys, Shamar Turner I was looking at, who I think I would have rather had in the 3rd round if I could have traded down. I don't know. I wasn't happy with taking someone like Stewart 13th overall. Oh, excuse me.
Yeah, he's an interesting guy because I'd like him as a 4-3 end because of his length and how explosive he is into the backfield. I think as a 3-4 end, if he shows the ability to play through people at 6'5", 270 pounds, then I think he got something special. But he's an enigma because he was so disruptive in college. Mm-hmm. He had so many pressures, but he only had 4.5 sacks throughout his college career. So I would like him better in a 4-3 defense. I don't hate the pick, but I'd like it better in the 4-3 defense.
Him or Jalen Walker?
Oh, Jalen Walker.
I should have stuck with Jalen Walker.
He's that one. He seems like a guy he was right there with the Kenneth Grants. I said Malachi Starks and some of those other guys I was considering, but Jalen Walker just seems like one of those guys that Dolphins might have intrigue in. But Jake, I liked with you going, Shamar. I mean, did you see the interview? I think he's a Miami Dolphins fan by nature. He was talking about the Jarvis Landry years, so maybe that's what kind of led into you drafting him. But I think I lean Jalen Walker too, and for some reason, man, he just seems like one of those players that if he's there, that Chris Greer might get a little bit excited and draft him for that potential and what they can do with him moving around that defense.
Yeah, I think, Jake, I do think Shamar Stewart is more likely to be drafted than Jalen Walker by the Dolphins, though, because very simply because a lot of Walker's appeal is that he can move around, play inside linebacker as well, and now that's kind of off the board because the Dolphins have added so much inside linebacker depth here in 2025. So Stewart is somebody that he could go 7th overall. He could drop to the 2nd round. He's one of the big enigmas of this draft.
Have you guys done a lot of mock drafts? Because I think this was a good process for me. This is I think honestly my second mock draft. So I think it was a good idea for me to kind of fall into a trap a little bit, because I think as I'll go through this, I started to notice like I made some mistakes here. How many have you guys done?
2 on the show, I think. I hate mock drafts, to be honest with you. I mean, no, actually I don't. Like for purposes like this, they're great, but I used to do mock drafts when I was like, I mean, when they weren't really a thing, like 20 years ago, and they were really fun to do because you had to do a lot of research on them. Now you just go to the computer, trade down 17 times, have a 30-person draft, and then post it on Twitter, and just kind of ruined it for me. So. But anyway, I'm having fun on this show, so that's all that matters.
We are the old men yelling. No, I've only done 2 as well. I feel like they're just, there's that one pick, right? We talk about Kenneth Grant. He's ranked 33rd. He's fallen to the second round in some drafts. People are posting that. It's like, at least I don't think there's any chance in hell Kenneth Grant's in the second round. So there's always those prospects that kind of throw a monkey wrench in it. So I've done 2, and I'm going to be honest, I felt a lot more confident in my first one than I did the second one as Chris Greer.
Kat, who do you got in the second round?
So this is the one player I point to in this draft and say, this just fits everything. Not for great reasons, fits everything that the Dolphins want. That is Marcus Embo from Purdue. And it's not that he's not the guy I'd go with in the second round, just to make that clear. And look, he's a good prospect, but he played right guard in 2022 or 2021 and 2022 for Purdue, and he played right tackle in 2023 and 2024. All right, very athletic guy, 6'4", 6'5", 300 to 305 pounds. And I think he does give you positional versatility. So if you want to go back to the earlier conversation, if he's not strong enough to stay inside a guard, maybe he does challenge for one of the tackle spots. But I also look at, and I think he's extremely athletic and fires off the ball too. So a really good fit in this offense. He's also somebody that when the Dolphins draft along the offensive line, it frustrates me because I think, okay, he's versatile, he's a good kid, he's smart, this, that. But on 3rd and 1, when you just need to knock the guy out of the way to get the first down, is he going to be that guy for you? We'll see. But I think he would have to add on weight to do that. But Marcus Embo is my second-round pick out of Purdue.
Good pick. I wish I would have went guard. In hindsight, I think that's probably where I should have went. But I went with safety, Andrew Makuba, safety from Texas. 5'11", 186 pounds, ran a 4.45 40, 4-year starter, played a little bit at Clemson. And I think that's really where I first took notice of him. I don't know if it was in some of those later games in the year, maybe against Bama or things like that, but he just stuck out. He was always around the ball doing things like that. Actually started a game in the slot at one point. So this is a guy who's playmaking safety, has some range to him. And again, we need a safety pretty bad. So I thought about Malachi Starks in round 1. I might overvalue the safety position based on everything I continue to read, based on things that people are saying. I mean, still he gets a position of worth, but this was a guy who I felt like if he's there, which again, did 2 mock drafts, don't think he was there in my first one. He was there now. So hopefully fits a position of need and can be an added player in that room with Iffy, Ashton Davis, and Patrick Morris. Cannot forget about him.
I went Josh Connerly Jr., tackle out of Oregon. I kind of saw a little bit of the Robert Hunt debate in him, somebody who I think a lot of franchises are looking at to be a tackle, and then somebody who can also swing inside. I don't think he has experience at guard, but a lot of teams are kind of looking at him to play guard. So I thought that could be a little interesting dynamic for the Dolphins, a team that could use some sort of answer at tackle if it's needed. But at 6'5", 315, let him play guard for a year, especially a second-round pick. I think he could come in and start right away. I thought that would kind of be the best way to improve the Dolphins. And going, edge defensive tackle in round 1 and then adding that offensive tackle in round 2, I felt pretty good about the trenches, but the Dolphins have a couple of obvious needs on this roster, right, guys? Offensive line, defensive line, safety, and cornerback. When you got through your first 2 picks, did you kind of feel like you missed out on filling one of the different voids for the Dolphins here? Or were you kind of confident that, hey, this is a position the Dolphins might not invest in too much once we get to the draft, considering you 3 picks in the top 100?
Well, you look at their lineup now. I mean, you've just got massive holes in 4 or 5 different spots. I mean, like Liam Eichenberg's starting for you. Matt Dickerson's starting for you. Storm Duck is starting for you. Ife Melifonwu and Ashton Davis are your starting safeties. I mean, those are 5 for me, 5 massive holes right there. So you kind of got to. That's why you really do have to pick the best players on the board, and get creative with the other spots.
Yeah, I absolutely. Like I said, I should went guard in the second round because I realized as this board continues to fall, like I made some moves based on need. And Chris Greer, I mean, every year talking about all off season, right? The flex steal stuff. I mean, I feel like he's put us in a hell of a situation, especially now with Armstead and Calais Campbell, off to greener pastures, kind of.
The Dolphins traded their third round pick for Jalen Wright, so they are sitting here with 1 third-round pick. It is a compensatory pick, 98th overall cap. Who you got?
This is a player who is a projected top 15, top 20 pick before the season. Had a pretty mediocre season. He's gotten crapped on so much that I actually now think he's pretty underrated, and that's Deion Walker from Kentucky. 6'7", 331 pounds. Went from 7.5 sacks to 1.5 sacks last year for Kentucky. Went from 13 tackles for loss in 2023 to 5 last year. And when you watch him play, the guy can't bend his back to save his life. But he is also 6'7", 330. And I think as a 3-4 edge, I think he's a 3-4 defensive end, purely. And I think the Dolphins, if you take him and you put him at defensive end, if you really hit it with him and get him back to the 2023 form, maybe you have him at defensive end, Kenneth Grant at nose tackle, obviously Zach Sealer and Benito Jones, and now you've got a 4-man rotation.
Yeah, I'm liking your draft a lot more than I probably have liked mine so far, or at least moving forward. Dylan Fairchild, I went offensive guard here. I keep talking about it, right? I need an offensive guard. I feel like I may have reached the more I look up, some of the things or where he might be ranked among other people, but it goes back to the Kenneth Grant thing, right? If you feel like there's a player you like, it doesn't matter. Started all 14 games last year at left guard for the Georgia Bulldogs, 23 throughout his career. Graded the highest player on that offensive line. So it sounds like from what I watch, he's better in pass pro than he is in the run game. Looks like a solid developmental player, but I mean, we're sitting here starting like, Kat said, Liam Eichenberg. So he was the best rated guard according to their stuff. I went through them and tried to see which ones I preferred, and I settled on Dylan Fairchild. So we'll see, but it can't be any worse than Liam Eichenberg.
I started to stray away from the needs here at this point because I do think that while you have some obvious souls here, I think you're kind of chasing your tail a little bit if you don't invest in a couple strengths here. And something Mike McDaniel's talked a lot about is what's the upward trajectory. So the way he explains the type of players he's been looking for this offseason is so complicated and so unnecessary. Basically, what he was trying to say is we don't want Jordan Poyer. We don't need somebody that's been in the league for 15 years. We want guys we can coach up. We want guys we can develop. I want to take you guys back to 2012 when the Dolphins drafted Michael Agnew in the 3rd round because I went Gunnar Helm at 98 overall because I saw somebody who could be a part-time inline blocker, but also something that Mike McDaniel preached a lot is we need guys that can help us throughout the entire season. If you need someone to catch one pass in week 17, it's not going to be Grant Dubois. It's not going to be one of these 3rd string wide receivers. I could see Gunnar Helm kind of starting out a little slowly here, especially with someone like Jonnu Smith in the mix, Julian Hill in the mix. And then as the season goes on, maybe he gets a little more comfort and can be a part-time playmaker when the Dolphins are desperate for answers in week 16 when the run game disappears again.
I am a huge Gunnar Helm fan, so that's somebody I've always liked. And he ran very slow at the combine, which has hurt his draft stock. I compare his draft stock a lot to Mark Andrews a few years ago, where Andrews did not test out very well athletically, but was a very productive college player. And one thing with tight ends that I think separates them and allows them to get into the passing game quickly is hip flexibility and getting in and out of routes quickly. And I think Gunnar Helm has that, even though he doesn't have the long speed that you see from some of these other tight ends in this class.
You want me to do mine, Jake? 4th round?
Josh, before that, I just want to ask you, do you think Gunnar Helm could do an 8-yard catch like Durham Smythe?
Oh, hell yeah. Yeah, for sure, right? I think Pharaoh Cooper, we've said, or Pharaoh Brown, what Pharaoh Cooper? I think we've said that he's going to be able to make some impact plays like Durham Smythe. So, yeah, absolutely, man. But for me, I went 4th round. I'll take this one. Smile Munden Jr., linebacker, Georgia, 5-star recruit. three down linebacker. They can play a little bit, can do a little bit of everything, above average in coverage, which we know, means a lot in Anthony Weaver's defense. Led the Bulldogs in tackles in 2022, was 75, started all 13 games that season, all 11 games in 2023, 10 last season with 57 tackles, 3 sacks, 3 pass breakups. So we know we Dolphins need a linebacker. My biggest thing is this my Channing Tindall replacement? I don't know. So they went back to Georgia. I double dipped a little bit. Whether it was the guard, we saw Solomon Kinley, right? We saw Channing Tindall. So the Dolphins are now getting a new Georgia guard. They're getting a new Georgia linebacker and 5-star recruit too. I don't know if I said that. So Smiles his name.
So in 4th round, obviously got 2 picks here. First one is, and again, what I think the Dolphins will do, not what I would do, but it seems like they can never get out of the 4th or 5th round without a running back. And I gave them Jaden Blue from Texas. This is an underclassman, one of the younger players in this draft. Should have stayed in school, never had more than 730 rushing yards in his career, but he's an up-and-comer, I think, and he should have stayed in school. What I think the Dolphins will like most about him, he gets skinny into the hole, and that is what they really liked about Raheem Mostert. It's what they really liked about Jalen Wright, and he has that same running style. He also caught 42 passes last year, which is a lot for a college running back. So I could see him coming in here, and even though he's not huge, but he is 6 foot. He's 6 foot tall, 200 plus pounds. So he does have some size, and he's got a lot of potential to him. So he's my pick there in the 4th round. My other guy is Tommy. Actually, the only guy I have, I think, that I have on both mocks, and that's Tommy Hill from Nebraska. I talked about. I think the Dolphins need to get a little bit creative at safety if there's an early run. He is a cornerback, so they could keep him at cornerback at 6'1", 213, but I think he's really choppy out there too. So that could work in a zone scheme where you don't have to cover as much ground. But if it doesn't work, he's a hard-hitting cornerback. I think that transitions well into the nickel role or safety. So Tommy Hill is somebody I've always liked, even though he's run a lot slower in the mid to late 4.5s than a lot of people would have liked.
2 picks here. First, I went Jordan Hancock, 6'1", 195 pounds, senior cornerback out of Ohio State. When I was looking at how the Dolphins can really approach this draft in the 4th round, honestly, I go back, for some reason I think about, at the time, I thought Skylar Thompson was a great addition as a 7th round guy, specifically because he was older, right? The Dolphins didn't need a starting franchise quarterback. They needed somebody who could do more than snap the ball once without fumbling it. When I kind of look at what the Dolphins need at cornerback, you have a strong edge rushing unit. Linebacker is pretty much set. Jordan Hancock, he's been a starter for a couple of years now, a couple long runs with Ohio State. So I just kind of looked at this as a scenario where you could draft someone a little bit later, being in the 4th round, and give them the chance to be a starter. Because like we mentioned earlier, you're not going to have the opportunity to fill every single need. I think the Dolphins could still address cornerback in free agency. But if you want to, shoot a dart and try to connect in the 4th round to someone who could be a week 1 starter, I think Jordan Hancock has that potential based on his experience, just time in college, being a senior. Maybe the game will slow down a little quicker for him than someone else. And guys, from here, I went crazy. I went Quinn Ewers with that second 4th round pick, because I'm thinking to myself, you have Zach Wilson, but how much can we really talk ourselves up about Zach Wilson, someone who's struggled throughout his career? A project. He's nothing more than that at this point until he shows otherwise. So I kind of just looked at it. If the Dolphins are desperate in week 15, you have someone like Ewers who hopefully could step in for a game, and then you got a connection with Gunnar Helm. That's really as far as my mindset went, but I do think the Dolphins, I don't know if it'll be before day 3, but I think in the first 4 or 5 rounds, there's going to be a quarterback drafted, and I think he will be competing for that backup quarterback job sooner rather than later.
I like that pick. I like that pick in the 4th round as a developmental guy. And the Dolphins at 100% should draft a quarterback. And we've been saying it for I've been saying it for 20 years. You need to just get some picks and draft some of these quarterbacks here on day 3, and they never do. So because they never do, I didn't have them drafting a quarterback again, especially because they gave the money to Zach Wilson. which was stupid.
I was just gonna say, if that's the most fantasy football way you went about that, Jake. You paired your quarterback, and I realized I didn't understand the assignment. So let me just throw out my second 4th round pick, which I clearly overlooked. Dylan Gabriel. I also went quarterback, Jake. I know they're whining and dining Quinn Ewers. Again, I think that might have been led to why I think they might actually draft one this season. But we know he's left-handed. We know he's played at UCF for 3 seasons, Oklahoma for 2. Oregon. I mean, he can do a little bit of everything. Has a little bit of mobility to him, I guess I should say. He can't do a little bit of everything, but a guy that I feel like could fit this system and, potentially, come in late in the year and be a better option than a Skylar Thompson. So we both went quarterback. The Dolphins, they won't go quarterback, though.
Dude, Gabriel was still on the board in the 5th. I felt really like going back to this is the second mock draft I've done. I felt really bad about taking Ewers where I did. I kind of felt like I had the fear of missing out and jumped the gun a little too early.
Yeah, Kyle McCord would be my guy if I thought the Dolphins would draft a quarterback for a lot of the same reasons. But yeah, I mean, Dylan Gabriel, I tell you what, you want to hear of I almost want to see the Dolphins draft Dylan Gabriel in the 2nd round to see Twitter lose their minds, including myself. But no, not.
It started out as a joke, but I'm starting to lean into it a little bit more. My quarter, if I could pick any quarterback, it'd be Jalen Milroe. But where would you? I mean, you'd have to pray he falls the 2nd round, and that's way too rich for this Dolphins team that we admitted has 4 or 5 holes, legit holes.
Cat, he actually just got a invite to the draft night to the big I guess event. Do you take any stock in that Milroe might be rising at all a little bit there after he got invited, or do you still think it's maybe just kind of a story for television?
I was surprised to hear that. I'll tell you what, the Pittsburgh Steelers have been showing a lot of interest in him, and they picked 21st. Now, I think that would be really, really rich. But look, you go back to when Lamar Jackson was drafted, 32nd overall. I mean, I know he won the Heisman that year and everything, but people have revisionist history with Jackson. Lamar Jackson could barely throw a spiral when he came out of Louisville. Yeah, right. Jalen Milroe, I think, struggled this past year, but runs in the 4.3s, and I absolutely think he's got a lot of ability. Me personally, if the Dolphins were thinking of looking for backup options or different options, I would welcome him in the 2nd round. I said that from the beginning.
Oh yeah.
I don't think they would do it, and I don't think they will do it. But yeah, that's gonna be fascinating. Again, Jackson Dart, Jalen Milroe, Dylan Gabriel, where these guys go, it's gonna be fascinating. You look back a few years ago, up until draft day, everyone had a couple of mocks had Sam Howell going in the 1st round. The guy fell to the 5th round. Because once the league agrees you're not the starter, you're not a starting caliber quarterback, there's no limit to how far you can fall. So anyway, that probably doesn't answer your question there, but
if Jackson Dart invited, I was just gonna say if he's allowed to be there, so is Jalen Milroe. I feel like I know there's a lot of people think Jackson Dart, is I don't even want to talk about it.
He could go 3rd. He could go in the 2nd round. You never know. But 5th round, just to buzz through these here. Connor Colby from Iowa started 50 games at Iowa, 6'6", 309 pounds. When I watched him, I thought he was able to get out on blocks a lot better. Like get to the outside on zone block, runs a lot better than I would have thought for being 6'6", 310. He's a mean player too. He just needs to add some strength. He needs to bulk up from 309 to 315, 320. Jordan Phillips, not the same one drafted 10 years ago, but somebody who probably is going to go a little higher, but he's 6'2", 310, a fire plug at nose tackle. Did not have a sack in his college football career at all, and only 3 tackles for loss in his entire career. At the end of the day, that's why he could fall to round 5. So if you do, now in my mock, you've come away. You've paired Zach Sealer and you've paired Benito Jones with Kenneth Grant, Deion Walker, and Jordan Phillips. Now maybe you're starting to build a little bit more of a front wall.
Jake, you said Dylan Gabriel was there in the next round, so maybe I should have went cornerback in the 4th round, but that's where I went because at this point, I'm starting to panic a little bit. I need somebody out there. I need a body to compete. I went Jabbar Muhammad. Yes, he's named after Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I saw that. Played 3 years at Oklahoma State, then 1 at Washington, then with the Oregon Ducks. Had 41 tackles, 12 pass breakups in 2024. Played on the outside, but I've read some people think he might be able to transition inside, which, I mean, we have Cater Kohu who can do a little bit of, can play outside, can play inside. So wherever you want to put Muhammad, he's a player that, has the pass breakup ability, has shown to be a little bit of a playmaker there at Oregon. And then I went back in the 5th round. For anybody that listened to our last pod, I went with RJ Harvey. I think we all kind of got one player that we have in both drafts. This is my guy, 5th round running back, RJ Harvey, running back from UCF. I talked about on the last pod. Just a guy that just seems to be always making plays. 4.4 40-yard dash. So that's where I went in the 5th round. Again, I probably should have got cornerback earlier. I don't know why I love the idea of Will Johnson in the 1st and then continue to just push the cornerback position down. Maybe it's just because I fell in love with Will Johnson. Whatever it is, Dolphins need cornerback bad.
Hand up. I should have looked up his JJ Pegues. Am I pronouncing that correctly? When I looked at the 5th round and later, sorry if I'm getting to be a broken record, I wanted guys who have just played a lot of football. I want guys who can step in and be comfortable if they have to be a spot starter. Starting with JJ Pegues, 14 tackles for a loss last season. A 5-year player. He started 62 games over his career. The fact he's, I'd say, only 6'2" stuck out to me, and I think that's part of the reason why he's fallen to the 5th round. He's a little bit on the smaller end, but when you're talking pure production over at least 3 sacks in each of the last 3 seasons, I thought that's a dart. That's someone you could take a shot in and you could be comfortable with if he's your 3rd or 4th defensive tackle early on. And then just to kind of keep it going, I went safety RJ Mickens with my 2nd 5th round pick out of Clemson. Another guy, he started 60 games over his career, 6 tackles for a loss last season, along with 2 interceptions. He's relatively dynamic, but I think what the Dolphins desperately need at safety are guys who just aren't going to get beat deep. I just think of that Chiefs game 3 years ago, Clayton Fedulum getting absolutely torched by Tyreek Hill, the one snap he got to play against him when the Dolphins and Chiefs were going back and forth. God, that must have been like 2021, I think it is. So just guys you can trust to be on the field. And when I look at Mickens, I look at Pegues. I saw 2 guys that in the 5th round, you can't ask for much more than that.
Yeah, Pegues I had in my mock, the mock I wanted last week. I think I had him in the 4th or 5th round. RJ Mickens is somebody growing on me, has a lot of experience, ran a 4.49, a lot faster than people expected. The son of Bill Parcells' favorite, Ray Mickens, the former cornerback for the Jets. And he was the Jets for years had Aaron Glenn and Marcus Coleman at the outside cornerback spots, and then a little pesky 5'6" nickelback inside it as their 3rd guy, and that was Ray Mickens. So that was his dad. So he's got the bloodlines. I always respect the bloodlines on that too. So to round out my draft here, has everyone said they're 5th rounders? I think so. All right. We're good. You can edit that part out. So 7th rounders, I'll whiz through them. Jackson Hawes, the tight end from Georgia Tech. It's almost become a cliche now to have him in there. Everyone's got him somewhere. But ran a 4.8 240 and looks like an iceberg. Never caught more than 16 passes in the season, but a great blocker. He could go 4th round for that reason. He could fall out of the draft. So luckily he was here. I think that'd be a steal. He'd be one of my favorite picks. Elijah Badger, the wide receiver from Florida, 6'1", 200 pounds, ran a 4.43. So he's risen up here into the mid to late day 3. True skinny vertical threat. I think they would like him for a lot of the same reasons they liked Cedric Wilson. And finally, Bilal Cohn, the cornerback from Western Michigan, somebody I like these late round, long, fast cornerbacks that played at small schools. We've seen that with Cater Kohu. We've seen that Storm Duck wasn't a small school guy, but those types of players I like late in this draft because even if you don't hit on them, they can be gunners, they can be special teamers. Bilal Cohn, when I watch him play, I've seen a few games with him in Western Michigan. It's hard to tell sometimes if he's just better than the competition or if he's overly patient. So, but either way, he toys with wide receivers out there. So he's somebody that I think could come in and really make the roster.
Kat, I know you got to take off here real quick, so I want to ask you one more question, then Josh and I can take the whole thing home. Looking at your mock draft in total, what is the biggest regret or what is the biggest weakness that remains on the roster that you think, if I knew this going in, I might have done something a little differently?
Man, it's hard to say. I think I waited till the 7th round to get a cornerback here. Tommy Hill can play cornerback. He is a cornerback, but I think he transitions better to safety. So but anyone who does a realistic mock draft for the Dolphins, you're going to have that same issue. how are you going to fill 5 spots, five to 7 spots on the starting roster? I think for me, the strategy, and I think the Dolphins' strategy is going to be, we're really going to go hard at a few positions. We're going to go hard at defensive tackle. We're going to go hard at offensive line throughout this draft, and then the other positions like cornerback, like safety, and like a few others, we're just gonna hope we get lucky on.
So Joshua, we are now catless to wrap up this podcast. Instead of talking a few more 7th round, actually, give me your 7th round darts real quick.
All right, well, I took Tyler Batty, edge out of BYU. I heard the name Batty. That has to be a basketball player, baseball player, or something, because I got absolute hoodwinked. This dude's 25 years old, so he lied to me. He lied to me about his age. That's what I'm going to say. Earned all 12 nominees last year, 59 tackles, 7 tackles for loss. Again, I might have thought it was somebody else. Then next guy, Jacob Gideon. If you look him up, Jake, Western Michigan offensive lineman. He looks like an offensive lineman. He's got the long hair. He's got the grizzled beard. Played guard, then transitioned to center. So this is a guy who, could push Andrew Meyer as, maybe that backup center, but can also play guard. I think this was a way to kind of make sure that my Fairchild thing didn't backfire on me. So I had another interior offensive lineman to plug in there. And then Tyleik Williams, defensive tackle from Ohio State. This is a guy that I don't even know should be here. This is the problem with mock drafts, but I thought maybe, again, throw another dart on that defensive line and build it out there. So that's my mock draft. I still think it's funny that Kat and I both had Kenneth Grant. Who were your last 3 picks, Jake? And then we can wrap this bad boy up. It's been awesome doing this.
I went Mello Dotson, Kansas cornerback, Trevor Etienne, running back out of Georgia, which, man, the more I read about him, like a 5'10" bowling ball. I don't think he's much like his brother. So that's kind of why I did it, just because I thought he was such a unique style. And I think he's somebody who might even go undrafted. But I think that's kind of the point of 7th round picks. You're just trying to get your first of the rest of your list, really. And then you'll get into the undrafted guys. So you get the big signing bonuses. I think Storm Duck got like I don't want to like 6 figures for sure, just as a signing bonus to come play for Miami. And then I ended with Glendon Miller, Maryland safety. And the idea was kind of the same throughout. It's like, we want guys who have played a little bit longer, guys we can step in and trust. Josh, the reason I wanted to keep you a little longer here is because in our expert fashion, part of our clip on our last show was talking about the Dolphins have like $16 million in cap space. You got to worry about Calais Campbell. You got to worry about Teron Armstead. And then you also got to sign some draft picks. Now that both Campbell and Armstead are out of the picture, I think the Dolphins are even going to gain about a whopping $1 million from Armstead's decision to retire. But where would you want to use that money? I know that there's also some conversations about even just letting it go till next year, but has anything pop up to you?
Yeah, I mean, I still feel like all these positions we continue to talk about. Cornerback, I think it was last week or one of the weeks, Kat brought up Rasul Douglas, I think, as a guy that you can kind of plug in there and, have another starter in the secondary. I mean, the Kendall Fuller thing kind of makes you a little bit more pissed off as we sit here, right? And you see some of this money the Dolphins might have. But for me, I'd probably look towards the defensive line and hopefully maybe a cornerback. I had written down some defensive linemen, and it's surprising that some of these guys, a lot of these guys on that list, John Jenkins, Raekwon Davis, Jordan Phillips. There's some ex-Dolphins out there in free agency. So, I joked, but I could definitely see Raekwon Davis coming back on, one of those small deals. But does that really change the unit? I don't know if it does, but that's not the Chris Grier way, right? He just likes to bring in competition, bring in guys that have the capability to start, and then let the best man win and let the board fall to you. So that was a long-winded way of saying I'm not sure, Jake, but defensive line, cornerback.
Raekwon Davis was a name I've been kind of, preaching for too. I think that would make a lot of sense. Josh, did you read anything about the Dolphins signing former Raiders part-time general manager Champ Kelly? Not to be confused with their new offensive coordinator, Chip Kelly, I believe.
I heard something about it, but was that recently? And it's like, didn't they start bringing in guys that he was familiar with, or am I wrong? Am I thinking of a different assistant? I might be thinking of the special teams coach.
Yeah, so the special teams coach who they got from the Titans, they brought in Ryan Stonehouse. Ryan, I think his name's Ryan, who's going to be their punter.
Westbrook Akine, some think that he might add a little bit of a say in that one too, but keep going. Sorry.
Another name, no, you're 100% right, dude. So, but a name I wanted to bring up, Jack Jones, former New England Patriots cornerback. He was actually just released by the Raiders. And something I think is super interesting is he was released by the Patriots in the middle of the 2023 season, and the Raiders were dealing with their own issues. And I think David Ziegler was their GM at the time. He was fired about 2 weeks before Jack Jones hit free agency. Jack Jones, he was a part-time guy in his first year and a half with the Patriots, but he's released. signs with the Raiders, who their interim GM at the time, Champ Kelly. It was after Ziegler. Jones last season was the first time he played more than, I want to say 7 games in a season. He played over 1,000 snaps. Wasn't great. He had about 10 touchdowns, opposing quarterbacks, 60-something completion, 66% completion percentage, I think it was. The only reason I think this would be a great addition for the Dolphins, he kind of fits that Ashton Davis mold of, hey, part-time starter, boatload of interceptions. I think he has 7. I think 4 have been returned for touchdowns. And I'm not trying to campaign from him as this like all-tier player. Like I think he had some, he isn't the easiest guy to work with at times, some difficulties. But man, like that seems like somebody who'd make a lot of sense as like that, low risk. He's been around the league a little bit because I think going back to Kendall Fuller, I think the thing that bothers me most is the dude was 30 years old and that might be a little closer to the Jordan Poyer area than we're looking for, but you want somebody that's done it a couple times, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm sitting here listening to you kind of sell me on Jack Jones. I'm thinking I almost have more confidence in what you're saying over Jack Jones. Storm Duck, for as much as we love him, right? We've got to see him, fire by combat, so to speak. So, yeah, man, if that's where the Dolphins go, if, Kelly would feel strongly about him, I mean, they brought him in, right? He has to feel some sort of way towards him. Why not bring in a veteran who has experience? And, that's probably a guy that a lot of Patriots fans were probably, like, oh, this dude's going to lock down Tyreek Hill or some shit like a couple years ago or something like that. So, yeah, I'd be all for it. And again, cornerback, defensive tackle, offensive line. I looked at the guards. I mean, I think Spotrack's the best place to find the free agents. And, you kind of sort them by their market value. But there's still some decent guards out there, too. So there are some opportunities for the Dolphins to, bring in guys that could potentially start. I mean, we've seen it before, right? But dude, I mean, the more we talk about this, I don't know if I felt this queasy after the last pod, but after this one, I just feel like there's so many holes, man. And but we lost Calais Campbell officially and Teron Armstead. So that probably is a lot of the reason why.
The one name that as free agency has gone, like you can have like the fear of like, oh, I want this guy, I want that guy for just about anyone, but I want to make sure I get his contract right here. Tevin Jenkins, former Bears lineman who's jumped around a little bit. He signed a 1-year deal with the Cleveland Browns worth $3 million. That's something that I would have absolutely loved as just another depth piece, throwing something at the wall. I think he fits that. Who was the lineman they signed like the opening day of free agency? Jack Stahl. Like he fits that, like somebody who might not be in the cards. Like James Daniels clear in the cards, but like a $3 million dart. Instead, he went to the Cleveland Browns. I think that would have been a great scenario. Josh, I know I've kept you a little long here, but I'm just kind of curious here. When you look at, let's say, 4 positions, you got guard, you got defensive tackle, you got quarterback, and you got safety. If the Dolphins were to flat out ignore one of those positions from here on out, and I'm talking both free agency and the draft, I'm not maybe a 7th round dart or something like that. Which one of those positions would you be like, all right, let's Jesus take the wheel. We're going with as it is.
And I'd be okay with it. Is that what you're saying? Because at first I was sitting there doing a huge sigh because I thought you're going to get ready for me to say that they're going to run it back with Liam Eichenberg because that's my biggest one, right? They don't bring an offensive lineman. I can't say defensive tackle. I guess safety. I mean, I like what Melifanu can do. I like the Ashton Davis pre-draft, but I mean that unit just brings me queasiness. But Patrick Morris, man, he's our hidden weapon, right? So I think I'd say Jesus take the wheel with safety, but any of those positions, I'd be queasy. I feel like the Dolphins, if it were up to them, they'd go the Liam Eichenberg route. Him and James Daniels, they'd be like, okay, our work here's done.
The worst part about that is one injury, and everything is looking so damn ugly, dude. And like, I think
it's inevitable. It's inevitable. Like, I hate to say it, but
Rich Rebar did a post Sharp Football analysis. He did a post, dude. I think 3 lines had an offensive line combination that played at least 70% of snaps. Like that absolutely blew my mind. Like injuries are going to happen. I don't think and that's the thing that's frustrating about being a Dolphins fan. I think you can say injuries are going to be happen, and you can prepare for that and still not have to start Jackson Carman in a must-win Week 15 game as your 5th left. Like, you shouldn't need 5 tackles, but you need more than 2. Like, I think that's kind of the issue the Dolphins have for him. Josh, I know, I'm so sorry.
You should never have to rely on Jackson Carman. That's what I was going to say. If you're a GM and you're relying, I mean, sorry, Jackson Carman's family, but come on, man.
Facts. I'm going to do one more with you, Josh. What are the odds that it's both Melifanu and Ashton Davis as the Week 1 starters, both of them? What are the odds?
I'm going to be that corn dog. 69%. I feel like it's pretty
Nice.
high, right? I feel like it's pretty high. I'm sitting here thinking of what they can do at safety. I mean, even Migo and Makuba. I mean, I don't know if that truly pushes. Like they're going to have a battle, right? And I think that I always lean towards the veterans in those situations, unless they bring in Malachi Starks, which I don't see happening. So I'll go 69%. What about you, Jake? You think it's pretty high too?
I think it's lower than 50, dude.
Okay, good. I'm worried that they're gonna I like both players, but I don't like relying on both of them based on the injuries to Melifonwu, Ashton Davis being up and down. It just makes me scared.
Dude, that's the great way to look at it, and that's kind of why I think they're not going to do that. I think when McDaniel talks about the players they're trying to add, it really sounds like he's trying to say not Jordan Poyer. Like guys we can still develop, guys who can still grow, guys that can help us in December. And you just think back to how that team was struggling and how Jordan Poyer did more bad than good in terms of highlight plays, if you will. Like one time you need somebody to come in and make a stop. I just don't think that that's that guy. So I don't know, man. I just think that a lot is going to happen between now and then where Patrick McMorris, maybe an Elijah Campbell. And I'm not saying that's a good thing, but I just think that Davis and Iffy are both here for a reason. And I think we just kind of got to keep that in mind moving forward that, hey, I think I'd be okay with them both starting, but I think the ceiling and the floor with them isn't going to be much more different than some of the other, former 5th round picks, Patrick McMorris, whoever it may be. You know what I mean?
No, yeah, completely. And you bring up Poyer, and it makes you a little frustrated because that was their vision, right? They were relying on an old man like Poyer. They relied on the Calais Campbells, Teron Armstead. I mean, I had no issue with that, but even Calais Campbell. But you're relying on those guys to play. He's 38, man. You can't have that be Jordan Poyer. He was pretty much a corpse. I joke about the Trojan horse, but yeah, man, you cannot have Jordan Poyer again. I just hope they figure it out, man, because our entire season relies on it. Our happiness relies on it.
And even if you had Jordan Poyer, do something, anything else, any sort of backup. You
have some foresight. It's like they don't even realize you can look past. And then in some situations, there are void years till 2056 and stuff. So they can apparently look past.
Josh, I have a fun time doing a podcast when I pencil out a half an hour, and here we are, 52 minutes. It is always a lot of fun here to talk Miami Dolphins football because we could just keep going on these random tangents here. And that is April 7th. That shows, man. This stuff, cut us open. We're bleeding aqua and orange. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, always and forever. That's our fault. We're guilty to a fault with that. Love us, hate us. We're Dolphin fans still, through and through.
And that is it. That is all the time we have today on Another Dolphins Podcast. As I mentioned on top, if you're looking for some more draft info, we did our 1.0 draft on how we would fix the Miami Dolphins last week. You can find a link to that in this podcast description. But that is it. That's all we have for you guys. Thank you all so much for listening to Another Dolphins Podcast. We will be back with a new show soon. But until then, fins up.
Fins up.